in the South. I'm in Memphis, Rob Brown, Bradenton, Ocala, Florida, and in the next 60 minutes, you're going to get the best coverage on the SEC and best cold coffee, hot coffee that you can find anywhere. Look, got Chris Plank, sideline reporter for the Boomer Sooner Oklahoma Football Network. He covers everything Oklahoma. We also have Yancy Porter in Oxford. He will join us as well, talking about what's happening at Ole Miss, because the bottom line is that you've got portal activity going on even when the portal's not open, tampering, whatever you call it, but there's always movement in the aisles. Look, do us a favor on the Sidelines SEC Sports Network. Take a picture of the QR code with your phone. All right, do that and subscribe. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Also, we got a lot of shows on this channel. Tuesday nights, The Lowdown with Lauren Meadows, Buddy Martin show at night. We've got Scarborough Knows. We got a lot of stuff on this show. AU Undercover on Wednesdays. I'm on with Ronnie Sanders. But we do this 5 days a week, 8 to 9 a.m. Central, Monday through Friday. So buckle up, get pen and paper handy. Sounds like an infomercial. There's a lot to cover. Let's go right to it. Out in Oak City, Norman, with Chris Plank, one of the best in the business. Chris, like you're stopping. You're sort of like a dragonfly moving around. Just you're lit for a few minutes. But last night, Cole Kubelik, SEC Network, spoke. We have a spring speaker series in the Touchdown Club in Memphis. Mm-hmm. We had Greg McElroy 3 weeks ago. Last week, Tyler Siskey. Last night, Cole Kubelik. Next week, it'll be Roman Harper. Cole said he said Oklahoma. We talked about Oklahoma a lot. And he said their defensive line is going to be really good. He talked a lot about John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle, his 29-year-old. I have a daughter that's 29-year-old offensive coordinator that's coming from Washington State. He goes, how many of y'all watched Washington State play last year? Not many hands went up. He goes, you're gonna know this guy, John Mateer. But first off, welcome aboard. And thanks for taking time with us, and love having you on here.
Appreciate it. So what was Cole's overall feeling on everything? How's he?
He likes y'all. Yeah. Oh, he likes Oklahoma. Yeah. And I brought up the point about Jim Nagy, the former Senior Bowl director, who's now your general manager. And I said, I think that's the most underreported story off the radar that most of the public is not paying attention to. But I think that is the most significant off-field move in the offseason in college football, at least in the SEC.
Well, and I think people in the SEC and people across college football get it. I think we've talked since, but, I remember, Rob, whenever it was first announced, I didn't know which direction they were going. There had been a couple of guys that had Oklahoma ties that were GMs in the NFL, or at least assistant GMs, I guess I should say, maybe associate GMs, down the road a little bit. And their names have been rumored just because they had Oklahoma ties. And when they announced Jim Nagy, I mean, it was a fist pump. It was, hey, this is a good move. I mean, that's a well-respected guy across the board. So, yeah, he just rounded out. They finished up his staff yesterday. I was real excited to see Drew Hill, who's been around for a while, is still on it. I think he's really important for this program. So it's played out. They haven't added a ton of players since he came. I think they added 2 or 3 in the spring portal, and obviously now his fingerprints are all over the recruiting classes. So it's been a real exciting time, and it seems like they've got a structure that's going to be very similar to an NFL front office. So I think it's been a great move.
Yeah, and you think about bringing a guy like John Mateer in. Washington State supplies a lot of good quarterbacks to schools other than Washington State after they've been there a couple of years. John Mateer can run. Talk about, this is his 3rd year. Usually when you switch schools, you've got to go through a period of adjustment and acclimation. This will be his 3rd year in Ben Arbuckle's system. He'll have to get to know his new teammates and where to go eat and where to hang out in Norman, other than the football complex. But talk about how big a deal that is. That's underreported.
It's one of those things that you just don't realize. Well, first of all, I know this might shock you guys based on my aesthetics, but I was not a high-level D1 athlete, so I don't know the challenges that come with installing and installing an offense and learning it and understanding everything that goes into that. But you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator, and in bringing in a new offensive coordinator, there's not, I think he's brought a quarterback coach with him. That's not one of the 10 or 11, whatever that number is, but there's not, a ton of assistants that are coming with him, but there's a quarterback. And that quarterback, as you said, has been steeped in the system that hasn't changed. Brent Venables, I think if we all look back, the big mistake that was made in 2020, what was last year, 4, was they thought that they could just continue doing what Jeff Lebby did with a different offensive coordinator. And they didn't change the language. They didn't change much at all. And then when it came time to implement it, you realized this is not going well. Now, Oklahoma had problems with health at wide receiver, and they had problems on the offensive line with health as well. But, you fast forward 365 days later, they say, all right, listen, you bring your offense in, you run it, and we'll learn it, and we'll get good at it. And not only do they bring in the new offensive coordinator to let him run a system, but Rob, they bring in the quarterback. That's been so he's like a coach in the locker room. He's a coach on the field, because all of these things that you need to have happen that would take practice upon rep and on rep. It's timing now, right? It's John Mateer going to a receiver and go, wait, that route you want to run here, you're too shallow there, because he knows he's the expert in it. And I think it's been a really big benefit for everyone involved.
Yeah, and it has. And you think about how big a deal it is to change quarterbacks, change offensive coordinator, and here you are, you're going through it, but you've got talent, and you've also got Brent Venables going back over to take control of the defense. Again, you watched Brent Venables. We all have for a while. He's been coaching. That 10-year run he had at Clemson was amazing. But kind of the vibe that you get, is he happier doing that? And he must have a lot of confidence in Ben Arbor.
Yeah, I think there's several prongs to this. I think, the idea that you looked across the country to find a defensive coordinator, and after Zach Alley surprisingly left for West Virginia, you kind of realize this is what I do. I'm a head coach now, but I'm a defensive coordinator. Brent always has the joke whenever, there'll be someone to say this was what it was supposed to be. He's like, I'm the linebackers coach. That's all that's my background. It's just all these head coaching things. He's got a great sense of humor about it. But I think it allows him to get back to who he is, and it allows him to be more of the Brent Venables that has a chance to be the most successful head coach. I also think that, the new format, the new kind of landscape of college sports helps him too, because it allows him to, hand off some personnel stuff to Jim Nagy, all of it. It allows him to hand off, we've got at Oklahoma, you've got someone who's kind of the president of the football program too. So I think the new structure has allowed him to have a little bit more confidence in, hey, I can delegate. I've got people here to help me on that front where I don't have to do it all. And maybe it's media responsibilities too, Rob, where he doesn't have to do as much as he wants to, even though a lot is asked of a head coach. So I just think that, you looked around the country. Last year was not acceptable. And he realized the best way to do this is just for me to call it. And I think the setup, the structure, the skill that he has, you've got Cole's talking about the defensive line last night. I think it's one of the best defensive lines we've seen here in ages. I think we're going back to the Gerald McCoy years for how good this defensive line could be. And I think all of those things kind of – and the confidence too. You mentioned the offense coordinator. The confidence to say, all right, I don't need to mingle and I don't need to worry. This guy's an ace in the offense. I'm bringing in this quarterback. And as long as things don't completely implode on that side of the ball, I think it works out really well to give him the freedom and the confidence to do what he loves to do. And I think Oklahoma can be better because of that. We'll see.
Yeah, and the schedule, you got, I think you open up with Illinois State, and then you've got Michigan.
Yeah.
And Michigan's a big name team. And Texas, it looked like they got a lot of style points for going up and beating them soundly at the Big House early last season. But Michigan ended up being a 500 team. It's going to be like this year because, they went before the NCAA infraction. is. That's well, you know, but then they'll. I don't know what'll happen there, but it's still a big name game. That game is in
Yeah.
Norman, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know that Florida's got no sympathy because the schedule that they have. I completely, totally get that. But if you think about it, Oklahoma's schedule is right there. It's one of the toughest schedules I think that Oklahoma has ever had, Rob, and I do mean ever. It's wild to think about what everything that they've gone through over the last, coming into this league. And first of all, you're coming into the toughest league in all of college sports. And all of a sudden you get the schedule that they got last year. And oh, great. It flips now. And instead of South Carolina coming here and dealing with Lenore Sellers, you've got to go there. And instead of Alabama coming here, you got to go there. Maybe you get a break with Tennessee. Might not be as good. I don't know. Nico didn't have an awesome season, but I'm just, it's wild because you're in a really important year for Brent Venables. It blows my mind to think about how challenging that schedule is here in 2025 because there's just I think Auburn's going to be better. LSU is going to be coming here. I think LSU is going to be good. So it's as wild of a schedule. And even that, I see the Temple game that third week. Oklahoma's going to Philly. They're playing that game at Lincoln Financial. So it's going to be a pretty challenging start with Michigan. And you don't get a lot of days off whenever you play week to week in the SEC.
No, they don't. And what after the first year, the Oklahoma fans, and I know everybody's doing comparisons, Big 12 to SEC. What were the 3 or 4 big takeaways?
The environments in every sport are amazing. I just got done with the softball season, and you go week in and week out to places that care and are passionate about diamond sports. Baseball was amazing, but just the environments. I do a lot of Sirius XM work, and I've worked with Tom Luganville a lot. And a couple of years ago, I'll never forget Lugs. You had a really good defensive lineman, Perry Winfrey, that is, I think he's kind of bouncing around in the league. He's had a couple of issues off the field. And I remember we were all feeling really good because Oklahoma had Perry Winfrey, and that's an SEC type player, 4 years ago. And I remember Luke saying, yeah, that's great. Well, you need 4 of those in the SEC. One of them's not good enough. And I think in the first year, Oklahoma, came to that realization that you do need a lot of depth on your defensive lines and in your trenches. So I feel like it was as advertised in the trenches. And, it's week in and week out. There's no messing around. There's no Kevin Henry does our basketball games and he calls them rocking chair games. Yeah. And there's no game that you just get to sit back and chill and you're going to end up with a dub like there might have been for years in the Big 12 in a couple of instances. So even Vanderbilt's good now. So I just, as advertised is the word I use a lot. I was driving in this morning because I'm here at my radio station today, and our morning show host is the voice of the Sooners, Toby Rowland, and he was saying, what grade would you give the first year in the SEC? And his co-host said, about a B minus, C plus. And Toby's like, I'd give it a D. I thought it was terrible because we lost this. We weren't good here. We're not in the World Series. It's just all these things that you sometimes look at it and you realize Oklahoma shouldn't have to reset its expectations. And a lot of people did. But it, like you said, everything seems to kind of feed off football. And if you can be better in football, you're going to be fine. But I'm telling you right now, that schedule and that defensive line, I hope this is the year where they've got the personnel they need, because if they don't, it can get ugly in a hurry. So you just learned a lot of things that people warned you about and told you about that ended up being true, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah, and then you go bring in one of the first things I think happened when Jim Nagy got there. You bring Jaden Ott from Cal,
Right.
But I go back to that defensive line. That's one of the things Cole Kubelik talked about was the He said, Oklahoma folks, you better get ready because they are passionate. We know that. Yep. There's a lot of tradition. You're talking top 6 winningest programs of all time. 52 conference championships, 7 Heisman trophies, 7 national championships, and they've played for a hell of a lot more than that, I would imagine, over the years. But it's the only school in the country that has 4 different coaches who've won 100 games or more. That's Barry Switzer, obviously Bob Stoops, Bud Wilkinson. There's some big time coaches that have been there. Who was the fourth one? Wasn't Chuck Fairbanks? No, that was Colorado. Who was the fourth coach? I'm not Bernie
That won
somebody,
more than
wasn't it?
100 games.
Yeah.
Bud Barry, Bob, and Benny Owen.
Yeah, I thought it was Bernie. It's Benny. That's right. Benny
Yeah.
Owen Field.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
it. Yeah. Well, and again, you look around this league, Texas, Texas A&M. We all know about how much money they have, but look at Oklahoma with a population of maybe 5 million,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they've got go back in the last since 1970. That's a good benchmark. Think about who's won more games, who's won more national championships. There is a ton of Sooner pride. And I think overall sports, softball,
Yeah.
Patty Gasso, they didn't get great, but that Love's Field is it's
It's pretty
incredible.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I think, the broad vision, everything is going to feed off football. I think we all agree with that. So if football is not good, everything else is deemed to be down. But they won a national championship in women's gym. They were on the cusp in softball again. You mentioned Love's Field has been upgraded. They upgraded the golf facility. Golf made the NCAA match play, but got knocked out. All these things that you look at, and if and I don't know if this is the case with y'all show, and I know it's the case with my show. I just feel like that I can say all these things about all the greatness that happened around it, and everyone would be like, yeah, but football. It's kind of how
Oh
it is
yeah.
with just about everything in college sports anymore. So, football beat Alabama and they knocked off Auburn, but that was like the highlights. That was it. It was a really rough season. But when you pull back and you talk about what Love's Field has become in softball, and then Oklahoma in what was supposed to be a rebuilding year, still winning a super, still going to a World Series.
Yeah.
Baseball, making a little run in the SEC tournament and pushing North Carolina to a Game 7. Women's gym, I mentioned, won a national title. It was a really, in the sports where you thought they were going to be, basketball made the tournament for the first time in a while. And the women's basketball got on a great run. In the sports where you thought they were going to be good, they were. But in the sports where you needed them to be really good, it was a little bit frustrating. And I think that's where everyone's kind of giving pause for cause right now.
Yeah. And the other thing, we talked about this last night, NIL, and that House decision came out yesterday.
Yeah.
And Cole Kubelik talked about, and this has been my theory the whole time. I said, you've always had NIL if you're a player.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you about our family friend Buddy Leak, the late Buddy Leak, a legendary player at Oklahoma. In 1979, he moved back, his whole family and 8 kids and his wife, to Oklahoma City, got in the insurance business and did really well. That's what NIL is. And Cole Kubelik said, every penny I've made is because I played football at Auburn. He goes, some schools you can't say that, but you go to
Right.
these SEC schools, you can say it. And he talked about, the first job I got as a drug rep. The interview was maybe 5 minutes, and then 45 minutes, the guy saying, what was it like playing in the SEC? What was it like playing Alabama and Georgia? And
Yeah.
he goes, I've got 3 beautiful children and a beautiful wife. He goes, so this short-term stuff is crazy. And that's what I've always said is your real NIL. And now, here's my point. This committee, I can't wait to see who's on this committee. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to pass their test, the eyeball test. So getting a Lamborghini to drive around, I don't know if that's going to happen anymore. Anything over $600, Chris, there has to be full disclosure. We're talking with Chris Plank, sideline reporter on the Oklahoma Boomer Sooner Football Network. But what do you think about that?
I have been a big proponent of trying to do something like this. I don't think it's going to stop what they wanted it to stop. I think we're still going to end up back in court. I think they ended up back in court with issues because of Title IX. I think they're going to end up back in court because in every single thing that you've read, from the Sherman lawsuit to even the House, or the O'Bannon, if you look back at the core of those briefs, the bottom line was you can't restrict what an athlete can learn. So unless they get protection, unless they get, a collectively bargained, unless they end up with a union, I don't know how this is not going to pass the sniff test. Now, in the short term, I want to see how it works. I'm going to have a positive attitude about it. The Deloitte NIL Go, which is now the clearinghouse, it's one to get back organic and what was considered to be the original NIL. I'm just real intrigued by what happens when they shoot down the first program and say, this doesn't pass that sniff test. And then the next one gets pushed through. I think that's going to be real interesting to follow. And everybody's cramming. It's like a last second getting in under the radar. Everyone's cramming all these deals, Rob, to try to get in as soon as they can. You heard about Nige getting the million, a lot of these front-loaded contracts to make sure these men and women get paid. So what's going to happen then whenever we hit it? All right, now, boom, you got to stop. You got to stop, just pay for play. And it's time to make it authentic NIL. I don't know when you turn that spigot off if it's going to end up just stopping the flow. And who's to say everyone's going to report all of their deals right now? There's no power for NIL Go to say, hey, is that a deal that you have with Fowler Toyota is a great supporter here in Norman. Is that deal with Fowler Toyota? Where I want to see your tax records. I don't have to show you their tax records. So what's going to even give the College Sports Commission, give them the power to say, hey, you're not reporting this or you are reporting it. So I feel like it's going to be a challenge. I like the idea because we do have to get it under wraps a little bit, but we still haven't addressed the transfer portal. We still don't know how many teams are going to be in the playoffs. We still don't know what access is going to look like. We still don't know what the calendar is going to look like. So we've checked one box, but we've got a long way to go, I think, in making sure we get the game where it needs to be.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, and the consensus at the Touchdown Club meeting last night was, it's just going to go back to the way it used to be, under the table and all like that. And it's not going to stop anything. Basically, they've just wasted a lot of time, like we thought, to get back to where they left the house because they were hungry, and they drove down Main Street and went by 20 restaurants and came home and said, let's just go back and eat what we already got.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
We're trying to get it under control. We're trying to make it more streamlined. The problem is they didn't try to make it more streamlined from the start, and they let it get out of control like this. And I don't know how you get the toothpaste back in the tube. I just don't. But this is a good attempt. We'll see if it can survive several lawsuits, and we'll see what the process looks like going forward. I'm also intrigued by the paying back of former student athletes. Every former player that I've talked to that's tried to get in the process of getting, I guess the term would be, reimbursed. It's been a challenge for them to kind of go step by step to figure out what they're going to get and how they're going to get it. So that's another arm to this that I don't even think anyone even really talks about too terribly much. But, it's here. We got to play by the rules, and let's see how many people try to truly follow it and how many people find ways to circumvent it.
Yeah, and like Shoney, Rob Anderson, Valdosta, Georgia, what school will be the sacrificial lamb? That's a great question, because the NCAA, whenever anyone counterpunches, they crawl over in the corner and have a pity party. I mean, and they can't. They don't have subpoena power. And so this is going to be really interesting going forward. See what happens. And I think, minutes before you go, I see so many schools have built up these collectives, and we hear what Texas and Ohio State are spending. At some point, though, free agency in the NFL, that's what we have. Otherwise, certain owners would just get everybody.
And I think you're starting to see that it is trending that way in college sports.
Yeah.
Where certain what was the rumor that Texas Tech was going to spend like $50 million on its roster? Texas, Steve Sarkisian shot back quickly on the reports about Texas, but who knows what's real out there right now in the NIL world. It's gonna come down to, are we truly going to be able to get away from just buying a roster? Does buying a roster even work? You look back, who's the team that everybody claims bought a team? Ole Miss. They didn't make the playoffs last year, right? Does it even truly work? So I think more than anything else, the whole goal is to try to at least get things under control. And if they can get like a small step in that direction, I think that it's a big deal. I love the question about who's going to be the sacrificial lamb, because the only way, like I'll give you, I use this example a lot, Rob. I live in an area where there is a lot of construction going on, and it's a speed limit. It's 55 miles an hour. It's a major highway, but it's 55 miles an hour. Nobody goes 55 miles an hour. They drive like bats out of hell. They drive like maniacs. Well, guess what? If they started pulling some people over in that area and they started giving them tickets, suddenly it causes you to slow down a little bit. You're like, "Whoa, we're getting tickets here. I better watch out." You drive through small town Oklahoma, and you know that if that speed limit says 30, you're going to get pulled over. You're going to get a ticket if you're not going 30. We've got to be able to truly know that there's penalties that come with this, because if we don't, we're going to keep speeding through the construction zone. We're going to roll through Thackerville with no fear of getting pulled over. And I don't necessarily know if you need a sacrificial lamb. You just need to see whenever things are not by the rules or by the book, that there's penalties that come with it, and they're severe penalties.
And that's been an analogy a lot of people have used. It's like when you're recruiting a kid in state, you can go 55 and a 45, but out of state, you don't go
You better
85 and a 55. You're going to get in a lot of trouble. You can't get the help with the teachers and the principals and all like that. But another thing, one more thing, this was a great point last night. Cole said, you talk to these kids now that have bounced around, and he mentioned, Joe Milton and different players that, Joe was at Michigan, then he was at Tennessee. It's like, you're going to go back to any Michigan games? I mean, he goes, and then he goes, Tennessee. And he goes, now these kids are starting to realize, it's starting to sink in.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of tough back to Thanksgiving or Christmas if you ran your in-law's daughter, and that's what this has become.
Yeah. And, it's always good to have a home.
Yeah.
And they said this was, well, if you were there for 1 year and your team went, 9-8, is that really your home? That's just a place you went for a season. And when you bounced somewhere else, and all right, 9-7, I guess, and 9-6, whatever it might be. Yeah. But I find myself being in that position to where, I always liked having a place. I went to the University of Tulsa that I could go back to. And I don't go back that often, but it's just these guys don't have that when they've been to 3, especially in basketball. Holy smokes. I mean, you got guys that are going to a different school every year. So I hope that's something that's taken into consideration.
Yeah, it really is. Chris, let people know how they can follow you. This is great stuff, and love having you come on anytime you're available. And again, you are, as they say in the country down south, busier than a one-legged man in a kick fight.
That's true. That's true. Slows down a bit here in a couple of weeks because I'm going to get a vacation in, but best ways on Twitter, man. Always let you know where I am at Plank Show, and I appreciate you having me on, Rob. Thanks, bud.
Always. Have a great day. All right. Let me say something about Winter Timber Outdoors. Winter Timber Outdoors is located in Athens, Alabama. They're located up there on the top of the state between Florence and Huntsville. Open every day of the week. And thing you'll find when you go in there is a knowledgeable staff of people that get it when it comes to hunting and fishing. They're building a 1,000 square foot store in Auburn. It's going to open up first week of August, it looks like. But their goal is to open up in the footprint that is the Southeastern Conference and open up all over the place. So see how that goes as they continue to grow and get out all the gear you need, hunting, fishing. They've got, bottom line, Sitka gear, Dixie decoys, duck camp, all your stuff for your food plots, your deer stands, and everything like that. And you go out to a store, again, want to get people that can help you, that are knowledgeable, of trained people. That is Winter Timber Outdoors. Proud to be associated with the great folks, Kenny Winter and Dylan Monroe, and they're wonderful people. We're going to have in just Yancy Porter will check in from Rebel Yell Hotline in Oxford, Mississippi, and they cover Ole Miss level. That, I mean, you talk about Brownsville, Harrison, Gary Darby, Gordon Ford. Got a great team every Monday night, 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis and Super Talk Mississippi, all Magnolia State. And Brendan, if you think about, we covered a lot yesterday and talking with Chris Plank just now. I like Shoney's question. Who will be the sacrificial lamb? The NCAA has lost they used to be for going after schools with no subpoena power. select schools, and then other schools could do similar things, bad things, or worse, and not even get a slap on the wrist. Do you think, like I do, that you were hungry, you drove down Main Street, saw 20 restaurants, and you ended up coming back in the driveway and you said, "Let's just eat what we got"? Did we really accomplish anything with all the committees and all the stuff we've been doing? And then on top of that, they want to get politics involved, which I think would just make it more confusing.
Yeah, well, I think we have tracked this story long enough and looked at it long enough to say there are some tendencies here that are going to ring true in the future, which are different, i.e., the players are getting paid. So I think that's our biggest move. That's our biggest not discovery, the carryover into what we're doing. But a lot of the other things now feels like we're going back to the way of the old. So where we're going back to what sort of worked before, but we're going to do things like, well, now the university is going to pay directly, and now we're going to do these things. We're instituting a lot of these old ways of and creating this weird like unsustainable structure where this guy is going to get paid this much and this guy's going to get paid this much, and the locker room and all of the madness that just is going to go on the internal side of all of this is going to be a lot. And everyone tells us everything's okay, everything's cool, we're fine, this is going to work itself out, and I agree, but there are cracks in the foundation that don't seem to be getting filled, and I don't feel like this helped at all.
Yeah,
I feel like it made things a lot more difficult to understand.
I don't either. And look, here's what the good news is. Yesterday, I went to Barnes and Nobles, and guess what? The football magazines are out. This is Lindy's College Football Magazine. It's the national preview. Also, the Athlon Sports. And Brendan, it's on a different kind of like paper. It doesn't feel that feeling that the Lindy's does. And it's a little bit smaller in size, but that's what print media has to contend with in today's world. But lots of, absolute ton of information on all Division I, 134 schools. And you start looking at the rankings, Lindy's top 10, Texas, Penn State, Ohio, Clemson, and LSU. Notre Dame 6, Oregon 7, Alabama 8, Georgia 9, and Miami 10. So what's really changed? We've got NIL. Chris made a good point. Trying to buy a roster, that doesn't work everywhere, because one school can win the national championship. And Ole Miss last year in January, I think they had about 40 players who were out of eligibility or were just done or transferred out, whatever. That's next to impossible to flip a roster that big year after year and be successful. Bottom line, Lane Kiffin has, in the last 4 years, has had 3 teams finish in the top 12. In the last 50 years, Ole Miss has only had 4 to it. He's done 3 of the 4 teams by doing it this way.
Yeah, look, it's very interesting. As I'm sitting here, I'm trying to pull up these bites that I got after the show started.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, and so that's why your internet was getting spotty, is you can't upload and stream at the same time. All right, your internet is still very spotty, but we're gonna try to play these bites here and see how they go for us, and we'll see if we can't pop these guys in really quick. Give me 1 sec, Rob.
Yeah, and it's completely on me. And it is interesting where we are, but I can tell you, judging by talking to people out in public, you go to restaurants, bars, anywhere you are, there's the interest in college football is there. And we talked about Florida. There were 3 teams, and I heard Shane on your dad's show last night, Shane Matthews, 3 schools that he thinks are undervalued, that he thinks are going to be really good. It's Florida, Auburn, and Oklahoma this year. And I would agree with that. Jim Nagy, folks, you're going to be hearing about him at Oklahoma like you heard about Bobby Beathard with the Redskins and other NFL teams. There's just certain people who got to build and identify identify and acquire talent. Jim Nagy is a master at that.
Yes, sorry. He is. Tell me more about last night, Rob, with the
Yeah, things.
I'm trying to do 10 things.
Yeah, I got you. And this is on me. Okay.
God damn. I'm going to kill you right now.
Yeah. But
right.
and DJ Lagway, you look at the quarterbacks, you start thinking about Arch Manning. This is a kid that has tremendous pressure on him. But something Cole Kubelik said that I thought was really cool. He said, when you're around him, you just love his personality. And his teammates are the kind of guys, they want to play for him. They want to give 110%. And DJ Lagway's got that. He comes on the field and makes everybody on the football team better. He makes everybody push harder and give more than they even thought that they could do. And that is something that people are forgetting about, is that there are kids that love being in college. They want to be there. When you talk to these kids that have transferred around, it's starting to really sink in. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to go back there. I'm only there for a semester or 2 years, and then I switched to the hated rival. Trevor Etienne, running back, leaves Florida, goes to Georgia. Be kind of awkward for him to go to a Gator 10-year, 20 year. That's guys. I know y'all think this isn't a big deal, but it is, and it's going to come back, and it's really going to hit. I'm so excited about this upcoming season. I mean, you start looking at Texas. Steve Sarkisian, when Dave Bartu was on the show Friday, who we're going to get him back on again and again, and his lights out dummies. But Dave talks about Steve Sarkisian's history. How successful he been at trying to, bring in top-notch talent and get them to produce at peak level in all those big games. I mean, last year, and again, this is a theme of Cole last night of SEC Network. As good as Texas is, and Lindy's has them in their top 10, ranked number 1 in the preseason. We all know about Arch Manning, this kid, but he hadn't thrown 100 passes yet in college football. He's going to throw a lot more than 100. We know that. But you talked about the ruggedness. Why did Georgia go in? And that was my best bet of the year last year. I was so convinced Georgia would go in and dominate Texas because they're more rugged. And they won the SEC championship. Georgia was more rugged. They're just tougher, grittier. Now, you still got to have players. And we've all been hearing what Joe McGuire, football coach at Texas Tech, has been saying about, game plans and schemes and all. He goes, but we still got to have players. You've got to have X's and O's. It's the Jimmies and Joes. I mean, it's a combination. We've seen teams that are loaded with talent that can't seem to run the right schemes or whatever. So there's a lot of stuff happening. Ryan Grubb, Rodney Orr is out today. Rodney, during the summer for the next couple of weeks, he'll be out to the month. But looking at Alabama and, Mac and Cube, that great show in the mornings in Birmingham. But Ty Simpson, quarterback, he's now got Ryan Grubb, and they've also got the offensive line coach coming back. They were all with DeBoer at Washington on his grade. And, the offensive line, the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, that's a big deal, okay? You had a guy out there in Washington, Kalen DeBoer, who left to go to Alabama without some key pieces. He had Grubb there for about a month, and then he went back to Seattle and he's back in Tuscaloosa. The kind of quarterback that Kalen DeBoer needs to win and run his offense is like a Ty Simpson. Keelan Russell, tough times. Lost his twin sister last week. We hear about NIL. This kid is really a special talent, okay?
All right, let's hear from Cole Kubelik last night, Rob. We got a mirror.
All right.
This is last night. Rob, you want to introduce what this clip is?
Yeah, this is a clip from Cole Kubelik last night. I asked him offensive line play, the state of offensive line play right now in college football, and why we're not seeing the dominant and dominant offensive lines like we have in the past.
And we hear about NIL deals. We don't know what's true, what's not. But as a college football player at Auburn,
love to see it,
talk
but,
about what NIL means to you and how you would compare that or try to tell a 19-year-old today what it could mean.
Together,
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I wouldn't have liked to have had $10,000, $200,000 when I was playing college football. It would have been incredible. But I think the brand affiliation is more important. And I think having something that you're tied to for the rest of your life, that you can take your family to be a part of, that you can be a part of that family. Every dime I've made in my life has been because I played football at Auburn. And that's not because some booster has laced me up with a cush job. It's just it opens doors. It gives me opportunities.
They have
it allows
to spend
for conversations
30 minutes
to take
of
place.
practice,
and that has allowed me to go do anything else. There's
coaches
no
are real
NIL deal
big
out there right now that can compare to anybody who played college football at one of the bigger brands that understands how to weaponize that and utilize that. That's something that's hard for young people to understand.
Where we are. Can we get that soundbite yet? Is it coming up?
Cole, if you could talk about offensive line play. You played that position in college, and I think you and Roman Harper have the best show on football in terms of explaining what's happening. But the position,
Brendan, you still there?
From here, and how do we fix it, if it's possible?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be possible, really, because continuity is key. Chemistry is key with the offensive line. You have to work in sync, in harmony. You have to know the guys next to you. And if you're not getting those reps in practice, even in games, you're not going to be able to develop, get better, and thus become a great or even a really good offensive line. So guys going in, guys going out, guys not going through spring practice and then coming in the fall, it changes the distribution of reps. I think that's one of the big misconceptions in college football right now is that we don't talk about is the amount of reps that are being stolen. Guys come in for a spring or guys stay in a spring, they get all the first team reps or 80% of the first team reps or 80% of the second team reps, and then they leave when somebody else has to step up and they haven't had the reps to develop. So it's tough. You go from one place to another. The technique and fundamentals are taught different. They're called different things. You're asked to do different things. So you have to learn those along with learning new verbiage, a new offense, and then learning your teammates. There's just not enough time to do it.
That was Cole Kubelik last night. Rob Brown captured that. I don't know if Rob you can see, but we played those two bites. Everyone heard them. I don't think your internet's strong enough today, so you didn't see it on the back end. You're really stuttering. I don't hear you there. Are you there, Rob?
Yeah, I'm here. And we've still got the Cole soundbite. If
Rob, I played those already. Okay.
Yeah, and that was good stuff. Talking about offensive line, hey, Brendan, you find me a school in the SEC that has a dominant offensive line, but I do see where Florida's offensive line, I think, is ranked in the top 5 offensive line groups in the country, which is huge, okay? And the running back room at Florida is ranked 9th in the country. And you're bringing in some receivers at Florida. You got a great quarterback, DJ Lagway, which is a huge deal for the Gators. I think that's a really big deal.
Yeah. No, well, offensive line has been sort of some of the issues in the past. You know, have they gotten better? Have they not gotten better? These preseason things, these preseason rankings, in a lot of ways, can be so hilariously funny because, you know, we think we know, and then we get there and it's completely different. But Florida has overall, look, they should be unbelievable. But we've done this the last 3 years where we've talked about how great Florida is going to be going into the next season. And they're getting better, and this is the season. I mean, this is it. Like you really gotta, we gotta. I think the Gators got to go win 10 games to really, step up to the talent and to all the things that they have said and coaches said. Let's wait and see, and here we are. So, I think we'll see a healthy DJ Lagway, and it like everyone we've had on here, from Robin Harper to Buddy Martin. It's like, if Lagway goes down, then it's a different team. And then we only say that because he didn't play in the spring. So reports are he's throwing the ball great. I've seen some video and all that stuff, but we all know in game live action is a different deal. So.
It is, and I'm going to reboot and come right back in, Brendan. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, Rob Brown's going to take off for a second. Hey, this is a good time to tell you guys. Let's see. Let's take Rob out. This is a good time to tell you guys about the show. We're building a network here, which is exciting. I think people don't understand what that is sometimes. But if you go to YouTube, all of our different podcasts and things are on there, from Scarborough Knows to AU Undercover. That we do with Buddy Martin's show, The Lowdown with Lauren Meadows, and this show, SEC Sideline Sports. You click on that QR code right there, folks. It's going to take you right to a place where you can subscribe for free. A lot of you folks are watching on Twitter, which is really great, or excuse me, X, Twix, whatever we want to call it. Make sure you follow us there. That would be great. We'll try to bring in Rob again here. No, Rob's not there. We're having storms here in Florida. We know that. A lot of people don't know that you can jump into the chat room here. And you can ask your questions. We'll do our best to answer them. And we will, if we have guests on the stuff, we always do our best to see if we can answer those questions. Rob, are you there? Rob, you're muted. Muted, Mr. Rob Brown. Check. Mr. Brown, are you there? Rob Brown. Nope, he's not. No audio from Rob. All right. So, folks, that being said, we're going to be excited going into the new year, looking at all these different kinds of things, and trying really, really hard to bring you guys the best content from the people that know, on boots on the ground, from different media folks and stuff that you saw, like Chris Plank today, and myself and Buddy and Lauren and the whole gang that we have, a family here. We're going to be taking on more and more stuff. So Rob's going to try to come back in. We're waiting for Yancy Porter to show up, and I'm sitting here in rainy Ocala, Florida, which didn't think it was going to rain that much today. We are endeavoring to bring back Mr. Brown, which I think we have right now. Rob, are you there?
Yeah, I can.
There we go, Rob.
Yeah.
We can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm back on here. I don't know what the wide
So,
world
anyways,
is.
Rob, we talked to Yancy. He's going to come on, or?
Yeah, Yancy is MIA, so one of those days, but we will persevere, work through it. We've lost an engine, but we'll persevere. But again, this is talking season right now, and everybody's talking about what they've got on their rosters, and what I don't see a lot of in college football right now is people are not bailing. People are not turning in their season tickets. They're waiting lists. And there's a lot of people. There's 32,000 on a waiting list at Alabama to try to get season tickets. There are 28,000 at Tennessee. Pick the school in the SEC. Now, what I worry about is we got to just, as we get closer to the season every day, we got the House settlement. We know what the judge said, but we don't know what that's really going to mean. And again, like Shoney from Valdosta said, which school is going to be the sacrificial lamb in college football? Because what is going to happen is the amount of money, anything over $600, has got to be full disclosure. So when you try to go and get a player, you're going to have to justify, is that NIL or not? So look, right. I got to say, Brendan, I think the SEC this year is going to produce the national champion. The Big Ten, let's look at the Big Ten versus the SEC. And Brendan, I'm asking you as a fan, as a viewer, would you want to see 9 SEC conference game schedule, plus you play a Big Ten team, every SEC school is required to in the regular season, and then that only leaves you 2 non-conference games, and what does that look like? Are you in favor of that type of a schedule?
No, I mean, look, I'm in favor for a schedule that gives me the best teams and the best talent on the field. I want to see the best of the best. And, that to me, that's what we're all about, right? So yeah. If it's SEC, great. If it's Big Ten, great. We don't talk a lot about that around here. We tend to talk about how great all of our stuff the SEC is, and then we go out and get the brakes beat off of us, and you're looking at Ohio State as the natty. So, I think I think we have the best talent, but again, I've said this before, and I believe this, that the NIL and all of this is spreading and smoothing this talent out, and we're seeing a lot more parity in the SEC. We're going to see more parity in all of college sports because it's all going to be about the money. And if you got the money, you can compete. You can be somebody to compete if you want to throw enough dollars at it.
Yeah.
So I mean, what Oklahoma? We talked to, or excuse me, Oklahoma, Ohio State spent. How much do you think they?
Well,
really spent,
they say 20.
I mean, we got
20,
the number, but 20. But I mean,
20.
come on, it's probably closer to 22. I'm sure.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of extras there.
Yeah, and so what's happening with college athletics is that money is getting in there thicker and thicker, but it's not necessarily going to bring you a championship. You've still got to have a culture, and I'll tell you something. What's happening with so many coaches, I believe, is they're going to the collectives and saying, "Look, y'all run this thing. I've got to coach." It is affecting the relationships, and so you start looking. Full disclosure include hiring their parents for lifetime positions in a major corporation. Hell, I don't know. I mean, look, everything's on the table, but you start looking going into this season. Lindy's top 10, and then you look at Athlon's top 10. Everybody's, these are the two that I have right now. Lindy's has Arch Manning. I'm looking at it as the All-American quarterback. This is
depends on
hype.
which one you buy. Hey, we bring in Buddy Martin. You don't know if you can see it, Rob, but Buddy has joined the program. Buddy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. How is it over there in the Panhandle?
Hi guys, the bay is beautiful this morning. I got my hat reversed.
All things are great in the Panhandle. He's down on the beach. I mean, how can
what
can be wrong with that, buddy?
Because you did a great job of the night on our first Panhandle show. Panhandle podcast coming up down the road.
But Brendan, Arch Manning, I love the kid.
Hey, buddy. Sorry, Rob is just having so many internet issues out there in the Cherry Farm. Maybe he can come back in with us. So, how is it up there in the Panhandle, Dad? Wait for Rob to come back in.
I really we had a good show last night, and we'll get Rob back on here. But there's some good stories, and Murray State is one of them. There is a Cinderella, Rob, in the World Series. Murray State made it. They won last night, and they have such a small school that the coach cuts the grass. Do you believe that? That's got to be a Cinderella story. The coach cuts the grass. Murray State beat Duke last night, little bitty school. So the racers are off to the racing, and they've got one of 8 teams in the finals starting on Friday.
Well, it is, and you also have Coastal Carolina. Is anybody surprised about Coastal Carolina?
No, they're not a Cinderella.
Not at all. I watched them play. We all did.
Yeah, no, they're certainly the second team, but I mean, this is a team. We're talking huge Cinderella here. They barely. I mean, Murray State. Are you kidding me? They're in the World Series. It's a wonderful story, and so yes, that's you keep having these June Cinderellas now. It's not just basketball, Rob. It's also baseball, apparently.
Well, it is. And again, Murray State, the players, when they have to tarp the field during rain, the players have to tarp the field. And I love it.
That's normal, though. I mean, a lot of ways. I mean, I don't know. That's how I was raised in every baseball. When I get to high school, we took care of the field. You took care of the mound. You took care of, you did your own work. So,
it wasn't E1 World Series, but you're right. You did. I remember Mr. Tamoka Walt. So, And can I just say one? Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, Brendan, you're right. And the players, I think players do it more than we think. But go ahead, buddy. That was a good point about.
No, I just wanted to add to that. Last night I know nobody cares about this but me. I have watched so much baseball the last couple of months, and I watched a great baseball game last night. The Tampa Bay Rays, who've had an amazing streak now. They have their hottest team in baseball. They went to Fenway Park, and the Boston Red Sox debuted their number 1 prospect in all of baseball. He made his debut last night as the hitter, Anthony. That was the big story, except it wasn't, because they brought up a left-hander of their own, the Rays did, Brought him in last night in a crunch time because he had no pitching left, and he shut down basically Boston's Red Sox. He grew up an hour from there in Massachusetts, and this kid is going to be special. So it was a wonderful, wonderful time. Nobody cares but me. I get it. But it was another Cinderella story of a different kind.
Well,
Well, it's baseball season, though. Of course we care. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the best stuff on right now. So
Yeah.
baseball's becoming. We talk about the popularity of it and how it's increasing, and how college baseball is a big reason for that. So I think that's a good thing to keep the game.
Yeah, and I'm curious what the TV numbers are like for college baseball. 2.5, 3 million maybe. But the Murray State story is a cool story because I will tell you what, we do love underdogs in this country.
We do. That's kind of what we live on. And that's what March Madness made its name on, was the underdogs. I remember Jacksonville University. I covered it.
Yeah.
But Murray State's a special story. And here's why, Rob. Because in a time when everything is about the $1 billion, the $20 million every school gets for athletes, it's all about money, 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 money. Better players, pay them more. This little bitty school in Kentucky is the Racers are in the File 8, and they got nothing for a budget.
Yeah.
Who knows what they have for a budget? So it's a really great story. And Coastal, yes, we're still a little bit ticked off at Coastal, but anyway. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we are, and look, we got to wrap up. What a wild ride! It's on me. I completely responsible. Don't stream during streaming, but anyway, great stuff. Something real quick about Landers Ford, Memphis.com. Saw Brad Bellamy and Don Kitchens and the folks. They're the sponsors of the Touchdown Club. Open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m., 7 p.m. It'll pick you up, provide round-trip transportation to and from the dealership. They've got the 25 expeditions on the lot. Lots of cars, trucks, and SUVs. Get out there. They will work with you. They're committed to the great customer experience. Memphis.com. And also, right down the street from Hewlett and Dunn, Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee, open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. They have Barber, Filson, over 7,000 pairs of boots. They've got just an unbelievable selection of Duckhead, these great-looking blazers, women's dresses, ST, Devil Dog jeans, Rock Mount shirts. They got everything. HewlettandDunn.com. Hey, Mother Teresa's right. We can't do everything. We can do something.
Thanks, buddy.
Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We'll see y'all tonight on the Lowdown with Lauren Meadows. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.